I don't need an alarm clock. I have Sam. It's really good. Well, it's good to see everybody tonight. We're not racing through Exodus, we're only in chapter 3. I had a student describe my Bible study as excruciatingly slow. It's like, okay. But glacial speed, yeah. It's okay. It could be, yeah. And he is. I mean, as all that works, right? God is. Yeah. Well, we'll try to pick up tonight right after that sharing of the name. So I think Moses is in shock. So we'll pick up, I think, chapter 3, 16 or so. Well, yeah, there we go. So God's still speaking. Now go and call together all of the elders of Israel. Tell them, Yahweh, the God of your ancestor, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to me. So first of all, this is the first reference we have to elders in the tribes. And it's probably our best look into how Israelite society is functioning in Egypt. That they still have this tribal designation, and they have leaders, old men, that are the heads of these tribes. We'll see them carry this kind of confederate government, confederacy by, all the tribes have to decide to work together, really until the times of the kings. The judges will try to push against that a little bit, but it really isn't until Saul and then David that they break the power of these elders. So these elders would be everything from the court system to the political system to the counseling system. So the oldest, wealthiest, hopefully wisest. So first Moses has to win over this group. And there's still just a lot of questions about this. We certainly know that they would get that this is the El of your fathers, El of your father, and that this is the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. What we don't know is, would they have understood Yahweh? The text, Moses in particular, seems to indicate this is the first time he has heard it, that this is the first time God has shared it, but like we talked about last week, some evidence that the name was out there. So we just don't know. But God, in his instructions, tells Moses that, tell them I have appeared to you. And that's interesting. It was a burning bush, presumably a voice from it, and that was an appearance. God continues, I have been watching closely, and I see how the Egyptians are treating you. I have promised to rescue you from your oppression in Egypt. I will lead you to a land flowing with milk and honey, the land where the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, Jebusites now live. So God is repeating himself, but that's usually the way they establish that it's important, that it's truthful. So God has sort of a two-part plan. We all know this. I will get you out of Egypt, which had to sound kind of grandiose. What had this God done for his family previous on a big scale? I mean, what had the God of Abraham done for this family? No, yeah, the whole extended. Yeah, yeah. I mean, what other nations had this God taken on? He'd helped him with a kid. There'd been the time that Lot was kidnapped. They sort of helped with that. There were some kings, but they were kind of local and minor. What else? Yeah. What have you done for me lately? We've been working for the Egyptians for a long time. You know, it sounds strange to our ears, but there were a lot of gods people believed in those times. And there were all kinds of gods. Little gods, local gods, gods of towns, gods of river crossings, gods of caves. Gods usually were not magnificent, all-powerful beings beyond this earth. They had a fundamental belief that when nations went to war, gods went to war with them. And if one group of people won, that really meant that their god was more powerful and he was defeating the other god. So every time they'll make treaties, they'll make an alliance between the gods, sometimes a marriage between the gods. If you make a peace treaty, you have to keep a copy of the treaties in both of the temples so the gods can see them and make sure you abide by them. So it would have seemed a little bit strange to Moses. I know you're a great God of Abraham, but you have never fought against the gods of Egypt. These are the great gods of the world. They must be, because look what the Egyptians have done. Right? They have unimaginable wealth. We have a letter that a Canaanite wrote to an Egyptian king, and he said, "Send me some gold, because gold is as common in your country as is the dust." Now, I don't think it was that common, but certainly the Egyptians had a lot more wealth, power, architecture, civilization. The Egyptians were crazy old as a civilization. The poor Semites were just the new kids on the block. They had nothing. So it would have seemed strange. Okay, little God. That's a complicated question. But the short answer is the sun, the Amun-Ra, at this time, yeah. But not all Egyptians would agree with that. I think that's why we have 10 plagues. You'll see God take out sort of all the Egyptian gods, the main players. And then he sends them, I'm going to send you back to the promised land. It's a land flowing with milk and honey. Goat milk and bees is probably a better way. It's a place where you can grow strong. You're going to have to work for it. You're going to have to take care of the goats. You're going to have to fight the bees. And actually, they'll use that very reference, the bee that goes before them. But this land is in the hands of the Canaanites. We've talked a lot about them. Amorites are also Canaanites. That's the more generic term. Sort of, if Canaanite is the French, Amorite would be the Europeans. It's a larger sort of group. Perizzites, Hivites are mountain-dwelling Canaanites that they'll come into contact first. Jebusites are living in the city of Jebus, which is Jerusalem. So here it is first mentioned for us, but far in the future. God tells Moses, verse 18, "The elders of Israel will accept your message. Then you and the elders," that's interesting, "must go to the king of Egypt and tell him, Yahweh, the Lord, the Elohim of the Hebrews, has met with us. So please let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to the Lord our God." Did I remember that this is how it started? God's first negotiation position is, hey, give us the weekend off. Now, 3 days sound interesting to us, right? That's the kind of length of a festival. The Egyptians had a different week schedule than we do. They worked for 10 days, and then they took off 3 days. So obviously they didn't follow the biblical calendar of 7 days. So again, it's a nice reflection that this is reflecting Egyptian culture. If they had a religious festival or something like that, it would be 3 days, because that's when you're off from work. So why does God start there? Why didn't he just say, let my people go? Let's get down to it. He does want to demonstrate he's not just a God of I can't have a child, or a God of the desert, or God of goats and sheep.
But not just the Egyptians, he wants the Israelites to know who he is.
Exactly. That's a good point too. Yeah. Because like Moses, they probably have heard the stories, but never, except for maybe when Jacob saw the angels passing up and down. They haven't seen this Elohim as a super God. So they were to take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to Yahweh, our God. This should have, on the surface, appealed to the Egyptians' sensibilities about gods. The Egyptians are very proud of their gods, but they don't have a problem with other people having different gods. And to a certain extent, the Egyptians also bring in a lot of other gods of other people they encounter. And they'll hedge their bets, right? It's like you're back in politicians. You give so much to one side and so much to the other side. The Egyptians are kind of that way with gods. So presumably, where's the wilderness God wants them to go? Where can they get in 3 days and back? Where Moses is, in the Sinai. Yeah. That all of this really is centered around Mount Sinai. Now, it'll take them a little longer to get there when they do leave, but it should have been possible. What are they going to sacrifice? No, but they have sacrificed things before, Abraham and the family. What did they tend to give God? Like when they made the covenant, what did they give? Goats, livestock, sheep? Yeah. This is something Moses is going to tell us later on. We've already talked about it, but this is a no-no in Egypt because their gods are these animals. And we know, even outside of Exodus, this was much later in history, towards the end of the Old Testament, there were a group of Jewish exiles living on the southern border of Egypt. The Jews in ancient times were known as incredible warriors. And so the Egyptians were glad to have them as mercenaries. This is when they had been driven out of Jerusalem. And so they had a little temple on an island called Elephantine, named after elephants. And they were worshiping God. We've recovered their letters. I mean, they were there for several generations. But what did them in was a Passover. They went to slaughter the lambs for Passover, and the local Egyptian god was a ram-headed god named Khnum. And it made the Egyptians nuts because they were killing, presumably, manifestations of the gods. So that sacrifice would have pushed the boundaries. Not that the Egyptians didn't sometimes sacrifice animals, but they were so litigious about it, so ritually clean about it, that it was a little different. But. Verse 19, I know the God of Egypt will not let you go unless a mighty hand forces him. So the first part of this, how does God know this about Pharaoh? He's going to harden his heart. what does that show about the relationship between Pharaoh and God? I mean, it's so simple to us, but realize the why we know this is because we're learning it here. Who's more powerful? Yeah, of course he is. But is Moses saying that? All right, I'm out in the middle of the desert. You're some great God. All you can show me is a bush. We haven't seen you do anything for, 400 years. Meanwhile, Egypt is huge, wealthy. Their gods have massive temples and massive statues. Their army is unmatched in the world. They are the military of the world. Pharaoh is a god. I don't know if you can take him on. I certainly don't know if you know what he's thinking or what he's going to do, or if you can control him. Moses is learning. But God is admitting that it'll take force, his hand, his yad, to compel Pharaoh. So I will raise my hand and strike the Egyptians, performing all kinds of miracles among them. Wow, this is a little different than what we've heard before. This is a punitive act. God is going to attack them. Then at last, he will let you go. And I will cause the Egyptians to look favorably on you. This almost sounds like a politician's speech, right? You don't know what I can do, but I'm going to take us to the greatest nation on the earth at this point, and I'm going to knock over all their gods. I'm going to force their king to do what I say, and you know what? They're going to pay for it. So here's the line. They will give you gifts wherever you go, so you will not leave empty-handed. Every Israelite woman will ask for articles of silver and gold and fine clothing from her Egyptian neighbors and from the foreign women in their households. You will dress your sons and daughters with these stripping the Egyptians of their wealth. Okay. I'm going to look like an idiot when I go down and tell the elders, guess what? Not only are we going to get out of slavery, our God is more powerful than their gods. I know it hasn't been true since the dawn of human history, but this time, and they're going to give us all their money. So, it's more faith than we appreciate. Right. And they don't really have anything to smoke, right? It's like, he's been in the sun too long. Verse 4, what's that first word? Which is what? It's a vav, yes. Yeah, so hopefully we'll get better at seeing those. So this is just the letter V in Hebrew that they add to the first word. It's not even a full word, it's just a V. V that would go before the word Moshe. So we'd say Vamosha. So it can mean and, if. In context we get here, Moses protests. What if they won't believe me or listen to me, especially about that last part? Does that happen? Yes. Yeah, it does. Crazy. What do they do with the gold they get from the Egyptians? Yeah, they build an idol. God tries, he does, and we mess it up. But Moses just is not sure. What if they say, the Lord, Yahweh, never appeared to you? Then the Lord asked him, what is in your hand? A shepherd's staff, Moses replied. Throw it on the ground, the Lord told him. So Moses threw the staff, and it turned into a snake. Moses jumped back, because he's no fool. Then the Lord told him, reach out and grab its tail. And what does Moses do? So Moses reached out and grabbed it, and it turned back into a shepherd's staff in his hands. So this does a couple of things. What was this a little microcosm of learning for Moses? What did he learn to do in that moment with God? Yeah, for you. Trust him. This is a little bit like David fighting lions and bears and later fighting Goliath. I'm going to have to show down Pharaoh, but I do remember he did actually turn that stick into a snake, and then the snake didn't bite me and turned it back into a stick. So brilliant on God's part, just brilliant of what he's going to do. Obviously, Moses is just a shepherd out there. Shepherds, we all know, have sticks to fend off critters, beat snakes, beat off jackals and hyenas and wolves and lions. But the symbolism is really incredible. We talked about this before, but one of the challenges that took us a while to figure out in reading ancient Egyptian, the hieroglyphs, is that it's a combination of a phonetic language, so it's alphabetic. They have 24 letters in their alphabet, but they also have logograms, which are pictures that represent what they are. So a picture of a cat's a cat. And you have to be able to tell the difference between them. But one of the things that it ends up doing is that so many actions or pieces of art that we see, it looks like art, but it's actually words. So like an Egyptian statue can be a paragraph of a name. It can be explaining philosophical principles. I think it's beautiful. We can't quite match it in English, but it's going to come in handy right here. So one of the parts of Pharaoh's royal attire, part of his symbol of power, is a shepherd's staff. So I think I have a picture of one. Famously, Tutankhamun, King Tut was buried with this. So this is his across the chest. So these are kind of like the crown jewels of Egypt. They represent Pharaoh's authority to rule. So you have the crook and the flail. So you can see the staff, right? I mean, it's a shortened version, but that's it. So it's a shepherd's staff. Now, in Egyptian, this sign right here, we've talked about it before, is the word Heka, which means ruler. So when you hold that, it's like holding a big sign that says, I'm the guy in charge. I'm the ruler. Okay? So he holds it. He's the Heka. I can show you how this practically worked. I think we have Tutankhamun's cartouches. Yeah, so this is Tutankhamun. What am I doing? Tut, Ankh, En, and then we have Amun, which is back up here, Ra. Now they put Amun first because he's a god, so it's out of order, but Tut, Ankh, En, Amun. Okay, so then you have Amun again, Tut, Ankh, they're saying it there, and then what's that right there? Yeah. That's our staff. He's the Heka of Iunu, the ruler of Heliopolis. Heliopolis is the city of the sun. They're really saying Karnak, where Amun is from, so that's part of his titles. He is the Heka Iunu. So it's a word and it's a symbol. So Moses is going to walk in with this sign that says somebody else is ruler. Presumably in Moses' hand, it's going to say he's a ruler. But it turns into a snake. We've already had some discussion of snakes. Egypt has a lot of snake imagery. Snakes are how nearly all the gods begin in Egypt. They were snakes, and then they turn into snakes when they get old and die. we've talked about it before. Cultures have a lot of names for things that are important to them. Like the Israelites have a lot of names for cattle and goats and sheep. Egypt has a lot of snakes, and Egypt has a lot of different kinds of snakes. And so they have a lot of words for snakes. But one of the things you'd have to know is that the crown that Pharaoh would most likely always be wearing is a snake. I think we've talked about this before. So famously, this is Tutankhamun's burial mask, but he wears on his forehead two symbols, a raised serpent called a nearet, a cobra, also called a seraph, which we've talked about before. And then he also has a vulture. Not always the vulture. The vulture tends to get dropped, or the vulture sometimes will be used for women. So it's sort of two things. It means that he's divine. It means that he is the king. It also is sort of like the American eagle represents America, the bear, Russia. This cobra represents Egypt. Egypt is two kingdoms, Upper and Lower Egypt, and so that's what the two animals are representing. So that's, get this right, Upper Egypt, and that's Lower Egypt. There is a cobra goddess called Wadjet. But most importantly for us, these seraphs that Pharaoh wears, and I know this is probably way more confusing, for some reason, early Egyptologists always used the Greek names for things, which all this stuff is confusing enough. But more than not, you will hear this called a uraeus, which is just the Greek term for Iaret, which is the raised one. It's how they distinguish a cobra, because it raises itself up. Yeah, there we go. So Iaret, raised one, it's a cobra. Seraph is a more general term for a serpent, but not a snake. Although a Nearet is a seraph. The Egyptians say that this guardian, and it appears on the sun, on Ra, so it appears on Pharaoh, because he is the son of Ra. He's the son of the sun. So if anybody threatens Pharaoh, he doesn't like them, or they're disrespectful, or they're ritually unclean, this Iaret, this uraeus, will come alive and spit fire on them and consume the enemies of Pharaoh. Now, why would they single out the Iaret as being able to spit fire? Do all snakes spit fire? No. How does a snake spit fire? Yeah, what do cobras do? Well, they certainly do, and that kind lives in Egypt. Apparently, I need to bring one so we can have more life experience with cobras. And that's what every Israelite said. Yeah. It's funny how cultures explain things differently, right? I wouldn't necessarily describe venom as burning, but I've never been bitten. And that's exactly how and what they're describing, right? If it hits your eyes, what is it? It doesn't poison. Poison is not a feeling. Burning is what they feel. And so that's the connection that they're making. It's really unfortunate, and this was a transformative moment for me. Strong's Concordance. Do you guys know Strong's Concordance? Yeah, I had one too. And they're not the best. They were written at a time when they felt like the Bible was under attack, which when is the Bible not under attack? But they created a tool that was going to be faithful not to the scripture, but to what you thought it would say. And what they did, when they had seraph, they translated it as serpent unless it's referring to an angel. And then they came up with this kind of stretch translation that one of the uses the Egyptians will say of the Yaret is that it's the burning one. So when I say this angelic being appeared to me as a burning one, what does that sound like in English? The devil, but it's got light and heat, right? If you talk to an Egyptian and he said, the burning one bit me, what's he talking about? He's talking about a snake. And so that burning thing has a lot of implication depending on your culture. So I won't get into it tonight, but later in Isaiah, God is using serpents as a representation of his divine majesty. It's different from Pharaoh's. He has winged serpents that surround him, different than Pharaoh. But that's very much in the future. So it was just informative that Strong's, for me, was trying to stretch that without really giving you the context of what they were saying. But Moses is walking into Egypt with a ready-made sign that is going to take away the breath of the Egyptians. Because not only does he have a sign of his authority to rule, he has this divine guardian, this protector that's only supposed to protect Pharaoh because he's divine. And now they're going to see this serpent, and presumably it's a cobra that is going to appear. The Egyptians would be shocked. Also should mention, way back in the Old Kingdom, this is during the Pyramid era, so that would have been about 2400 BC. With Moses, we're about, I'll say I back that up, about 1200 BC. So well over 1,000 years before. There's a story of an Egyptian magician, wise man, that Pharaoh summons because he wants a prophecy about his future. He doesn't have sons. And so this prophet, and I should have brought the quotes. I'll bring it next week. He's like 100 years old. He eats 100 loaves of bread and 900 beer, or it's 100 loaves of bread and 99 beer, something like that, every day. And he's 100. He can reattach heads when they've been separated. He can part water. So Pharaoh was bored, and he had a boat going across this lake they made for him. And the Egyptians have really kind of beautiful dresses. They have linen dresses, and then over them, they create these bead structures that go over the linen. Just gorgeous. Well, Pharaoh's a pervert, and he has just the beads on the women rowing back and forth because he's bored. And this is Egyptians for you. And one of the girls loses her turquoise necklace. Turquoise is a big deal. It's from Sinai. They have to go and get it. It's hard. And so she starts crying, and all the rest of them are like, oh, it's okay, honey. And nobody's jiggling in front of Pharaoh anymore. So he sends the magician out, and he says, do something. And so he, ready for it, parts the water, and they find the turquoise. And the last thing this magician does is his staff also turns into a snake. So this is what I mean. These Egyptian isms are very, very strong that we often miss. Just like Moses appearing as a baby Horus in the swamps with the evil uncle trying to kill him. This would have given the Egyptians pause. This is too much. So when we get to it, the Egyptian magicians, priests, can also turn staffs into snakes. That's been a part of their culture for well over 1,000 years. But Moses is going to do it too, and more. So God is showing Moses, yeah, you think you know a lot about Egypt? I do too. And again, we assume those things, right? Because we know God is all-knowing. But this is how they're learning it. This would have been very strange. This is not a God of Egypt. This is not a God of the Egyptian people. Moses would have thought.
I'm sure he was overwhelmed.
Yeah. Yeah. My morning started with chasing goats up a hill, and now I'm discussing, Egyptian royal symbology and transforming staffs into snakes. Okay. But God's not done. Perform this sign, this ot, the Lord told him. Then they will believe that the Lord, the God of their ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, really has appeared to you. Then the Lord said to Moses, put your hand inside your cloak. Is this a joke? Stick your hand in your pocket. So they wear, I don't know, sort of this tunic. It's just a onesie that's sort of open at the bottom. So presumably he's sticking it in the top. So Moses put his hand inside the cloak, and when he took it out again, his hand was white as snow with a severe skin disease. And I'm sure Moses felt wonderful, right? Okay. I'm running away now. Where are my shoes?
I ran away with the snake was involved.
Well, you're out. So we immediately go to leprosy and all those kind of things. But again, sort of in context, we have to ask this. Why this sign? What is God doing this? Why is he doing this to Moses? To make something sick, something wrong? You can fix it. Now put your hand back into your cloak, the Lord said. So Moses put his hand back in, and when he took it out again, it was as healthy as the rest of his body. Okay. Do you think Moses was ever tempted, like later on, to just try it? Like, hey, Zipporah, come here. Tell these boys, Gershom, watch this. To be used for official purposes only. So what is this? A white, withered, dead, sick hand, and then a fresh, clean one. Okay, we talked about the god Osiris, the Egyptian god of the dead, right? Remember him? He's the god of vegetation, first pharaoh of Egypt. He was married to Isis. Remember, she's the goddess of magic. How did she get all her magical power? Do you remember that story? It was stolen from her daddy, the sun god, Ra. But her husband got killed by his brother, Set, who the pharaoh, not of the pharaoh now, Ramses II, but his father Seti was named after that guy. But anyway, so the god of the desert, the god of evil, had killed Osiris and cut his body up into 12 pieces. And Isis had to go all over the place and find his body parts and put them back together. And he was dead. So she had to kind of weave his body. She took cloth and she wrapped it together. She then used her magic that he would breathe again. Now, the one part, and you don't get this anywhere else, but I'll give you the full story. The one part of his body she couldn't find was that part, because the catfish ate it. Egyptians are weird. And that's why it's unclean for Egyptians to eat catfish, because they ate Osiris's little boy. All right, so she's in trouble, but she's no Sarah. She's not going to wait around. She's a goddess, right? So she magically makes a new one for him, gets pregnant. He's dead, right? They have pictures of this. You want to see it? Yeah, exactly. And they have the son Horus, who's a human with a bird head. And every Egyptologist laughs because you sleep with a dead person and your child's going to end up being really weird too, right? But all this is to say that their god of the dead, the first Pharaoh, let me show you a picture of him. As great as he is, he's dead. I think it's Osiris. Yeah, there you go. So the reason his body is wrapped like that is because he's a mummy. And his skin is either green, black, or white because it's rotten. He doesn't live in the world anymore. He lives in the underworld. Pharaoh is his son, sort of representing his son, rules on earth. So if there are two gods that dominate the Egyptian pantheon, it's the sun god who sort of controls the day, and it's the god of the dead, Osiris, who controls judgment on the day you die. He controls the growing of the plants in Egypt. Sort of like Ra is the state god and Osiris is the popular god. And so this is a direct attack on Osiris. He's dead, he's alive. How is it that Moses, by simple movement of hands, can do what the great goddess Isis could not? His hands, his legs, his little feller are never healthy and good again. This is a kick in the teeth. His son does. Yeah, no, he's just green. He's dead. Yeah, so this is Eye of Horus. His son will fight the uncle for control of Egypt. This is the contending of Horus and Set. And in the battle, Horus loses an eye. And so he's only got one eye. And so the gods heal the eye and send it back to him. And that's the eye that you're seeing. It's the Eye of Horus. So it's a like restoration, kind of their symbol of resurrection, sort of. It's a protection against evil, against Set. But their resurrection, not like the real resurrection, right? I don't want to be a zombie. That's what this guy basically is. He's mummy. So, and Moses is thinking, I'm going to get killed. Yeah.
So, kind of a question I was thinking about. What were the Israelite people in Egypt at this time? Were they, I know they were aware of the God of Abraham, but were they really worshiping him at that time, or were they more worshiping like Egyptians?
That is a fantastic question, and we don't know for sure. And the answer is, it probably depends, right, on who it is. What do they do when Moses doesn't come back from the mountain? Right. And we'll talk about it in context. They basically build an Egyptian god. So they had to have knowledge of it. There's signs that the Egyptians are using them for some crafts, from skilled labor. And so all Egyptian architecture involves the gods. So you're right, they're very aware. I think there was a lot of syncretism. That community that I talked about later that lived in Egypt, that we have a lot of archaeology for, at Elephantine, there was a lot of syncretism going on with them, unfortunately. But Moses is here definitely to get him out of it. But, think how much pressure there is to follow Jesus and your favorite football team, right?
Isn't that why God stayed so close to them, though, when they journeyed, the pillar by night and the
Yes.
fire? Because he had to teach them who he was to get them away from what they knew.
Right. And one of the first commandments is, do not build an idol of me. We'll go through. I make fun of it, but the Egyptian depiction of their gods is actually very technical. They're not just fools. Their gods are these emblems of philosophy, of theology, of aspects of nature. So very easily could have sipped in. Dr. Oswald that was here, his whole dissertation was on the fact that the Egyptian main sun god at this time is called Amun-Ra. And the Amun part means the hidden one. So he contended that what the Israelites were doing is they were taking the representation of that hidden one, of Amun, and making it Yahweh. That's what the calf was. So to your point, they were trying to take something they knew from the Egyptians. Okay, this is a God that we can't see, but he's strong, so we'll make him like a young, strong calf. It's not really him, but it's a representation like the Egyptians would do of his embodied power. And God wants none of it. Do not make things out of me. I'm not a thing. So Moses has got to know. He's going to go in, have the staff, do the thing with the snake, and then do the thing with the hand. And he's going to get killed. He thinks this is too on the nose.
But these are really just things he's supposed to be showing the elders, right? Get them to back him.
Well, and then Pharaoh. Yeah. And once you do it to Pharaoh in front of the whole court, the whole country is going to know. Verse 8, then the Lord said to Moses, if they do not believe you and are not convinced by the first miraculous sign, they will be convinced by the second. And if they don't believe you or listen to you even after 2 signs, then take some water from the Nile River and pour it out on the dry ground. When you do, the water from the Nile will turn to blood on the ground. Egypt is the gift of the Nile, famously Herodotus said. It is a source of life. And this is sort of presenting the crime of Egypt back to himself. They took what was a gift that gives them life. Everybody probably knows this. Every year in the fall, well, late summer, early fall, about now, the rains used to hit the mountains in Africa, and the Nile itself would flood. And so it would run over the banks and it would flood the farmland, bringing all this wonderful silt and soil from Africa into the fields. It would refertilize the fields, and it made Egypt like no other place on the planet when it came to agriculture. Egypt still has very primitive agricultural methods, nothing like we do, and yet they still produce a great amount of food. It's a blessing for them. But what did they do with the Nile River? To Moses' generation. Yeah, they use it as a means of execution. And so the Egyptians who have what we call it the Nilometer, how cool is that? It's a series of steps way down in the south, and when the Nile begins to rise, they can gauge how far it's going to affect Egypt by how many steps it goes up. So the Egyptians were watching this very closely. Now, today, the Nile doesn't flood because there's 2 dams. There's the Aswan Dams that's more famous, that controls it when it floods, and they let it go. There's another smaller dam that the British built before the big one, Aswan, and the Egyptians love to tell you this joke. You have to laugh when they tell you. So in English, the sign for the dam says the English dam. But in Arabic, they read in the opposite direction, right? It's like Hebrew. And so they always say, damn English, because the English ruled them and all that kind of stuff. So they love that joke. Yep. New Testament, a sign, the cross sign. Yeah. So we can see and know. Yeah. So not only am I going to walk in to tell Pharaoh he's wrong and some desert god is greater than him, and oh, by the way, I'm in charge, look at my cool snake, and Ra's not so powerful, and I'm going to do this trick to offend Osiris, and I'm going to remind you of the great sin of murdering children. Moses pleaded with him, oh Lord, He doesn't call him Yahweh. He just says, hey, boss, I'm not very good with words, which is absolutely not true. We've been studying this guy's words for how many years now in here? Yeah, he's a master of words. Are you kidding me? I have never been, and I'm not now, even though you have spoken to me. Well, that's pretty involved, Shakespeare. I get tongue-tied, and my words get tangled. Now, there's an idiom here that we're not sure really what it means. He's got some kind of speech impediment. He says, I have uncircumcised lips. So what does that mean? I don't know. We don't know. Hebrews, the rabbis didn't really know. Something is wrong. He may be a better writer. The Egyptians would not react well to physical deformities of any kind. So if he had a hair lip or something like that, they would react very negatively against that. No one could be imperfect except for Pharaoh. Like Tutankhamun we're talking about, he was crippled in one leg. He had to have a cane. But that's okay, because he's Pharaoh. He gets a pass, but nobody else would. Yeah, go ahead. I mean, is it a legitimate complaint? I used to have a stutter, and it was hard. I was young. Moses is not young. Yeah. I have a good friend who works for Homeland Security. He's a helicopter pilot, and he still struggles with a stutter. And it's hard. I mean, but he's had a successful life, and he does all that he needs to do. But you know what? This is terrible. Really motivated me to finally beat the stuttering, so I could proclaim the word of God. Not. People were mean to me, and I really want to say bad things to them, and I couldn't, because it's hard to cuss someone out when you stutter. So this was about 5th, 6th grade. Yeah. So Moses just has to go to his place, right?
But do we hear anything else about his speech any other time? After this, we don't.
We don't. No. And this is interesting because obviously we believe Moses is writing it. And so and sometimes he's very vulnerable and other times he's not. Because look how much detail he's given us here. He gave us next to nothing about the man he killed. Don't you think that would be the thing that would come up? I have blood on my hands. I'm going to go back to the elders as a criminal, as a wanted man. And I'm going to say, listen to me. And they're going to say, you have blood on your hands. He probably should have brought that up with God, but he doesn't. His anger, is it an issue? No. A lot of times we want to talk to God about the window dressing when the house is burning. So I get tongue-tied and my words get tangled. Then the Lord asked Moses, who makes a person's mouth? Who decides whether the people speak or do not speak? Hear or do not hear? See or do not see? Is it not I, the Lord? So literally, this is like Casper the friendly ghost that you've known in your house suddenly telling you, and I am the creator of the universe. I have created all life, all mouths, and all. We take this, well, that's of course because he's God. They're learning it here. There were lots of spirits and minor deities and family gods and patron gods and animals and all these things that existed in their world, but Big, powerful gods didn't talk to little people. Powerful gods talked to pharaohs. Nowhere in the Bible, really before this, did Abraham really learn that God created human bodies, that he created all life. Now, Moses learns that, but it's happening right here. So a lot of times we forget that God created us. The things that we want to do and think we can't do, he would not ask if it was not possible. Without waiting for a response, God says, now go. I will be with you. So almost a perfect summation of the Bible thus far. Abraham, in the beginning of this journey, was told, go, get going. Lech lecha. Remember the poetry. Lech lecha. Get going. Go, go. So they've gone west, young man. And of course, I will be with you is Emmanuel. So go and Jesus. And I will instruct you in what to say. And there is a lot of example of this, of God really spending the time to speak to Moses. But Moses pleaded again, Lord, please send anyone else. Then the Lord became what? Do all your translations say angry? It's angry. You know what the word for angry is? Angry, right? A lot of times, this gets dangerous, but the Egyptians would take like aspects of love. What are all the parts of love? Love is beautiful. Love is tender. Love is kind of possessive. And love can be a little crazy, right? Love can be a wild party, or it can be a beautiful poem. So think of all those different kinds of things. So the Egyptians roll all that into one god who's crazy. The Egyptian goddess Bastet. She could throw a wild party, you'd have an orgy, or she could protect children. She could be a war goddess because she's jealous, or she could help mothers have children. She was totally schizophrenic because they take all the experiences that they know of love and they try to make a god out of it. God says, don't do that to me. I'm not your imagination. I'm not your projection. And sometimes I see that in modern day. Well, my God wouldn't do that. My God doesn't get angry. My God is just love. Well, yes, he is love. He's not your imagination of love, but anger in an appropriate way is an emotion from God. In a sense, our anger happens because we learned it from our Creator. He gets angry. When something is wrong, when a child gets hurt, he gets angry. When Moses is, we'll come back to this, but God's going to get really, really angry with Moses in a minute. But he loves Moses. He will have a far more intimate relationship with Moses than any other human until we see Jesus. He spends more time with Moses even than he did with Abraham. But yes, someone asked me the other day, does God get angry? Yes. He's slow to get angry, but he still gets angry. In Hebrew, I love it. They say he has a red face. That's how they say anger, when your face gets red. All right, he said, what about your brother, Aaron, the Levite? And Aaron is going to be a running joke for us. Aaron is that ne'er-do-well brother who pretty much never manages to get it right, ever. So Moses is so much better leader than Aaron, but like Dumbo needed a feather to fly, Moses is going to get Aaron, the idiot, to be his plus one. And God says, I know he speaks well, even though he has nothing to say. And look, he's on his way to meet you now. He will be delighted to see you. Talk to him and put the words in his mouth. I will be with you, repeated a second time, as you speak, and I will instruct you both in what to do. And so it's a minor thing, but Moses is now realizing his God is not just here. His God has seen that his brother is coming, for reasons we'll get to. He's coming to him. His God can see that. Gods were not omnipresent. We take our God and all of the attributes to him, and then we retroactively apply it to other gods. But the Egyptian gods were not everywhere all the time. They could appear at certain times and places. They could appear in certain statues or in certain animals, but they were not in all places. No God was. Moses is learning that, wow, this guy, he is something more than a family spirit. To sort of put this in a weird modern context, people give the devil so much more power than the Bible does. Like the devil appeared to me and was talking to me. Well, are you that important? Because he can't be more than one place at a time. The devil is not like God, that he can whisper in everybody's ear. See, we're taking the power of God and we're applying to places that it doesn't. The devil is more powerful, certainly, than a person, but he is not omnipresent. He cannot be in all places. So again, little things Moses is learning along the way are big. We should appreciate them. So let me finish the section right here. Aaron will be your spokesman to the people. He will be your mouthpiece. And you will stand in the place of God for him, telling him what to say. And take your shepherd's staff with you and use it to perform the miraculous signs I have shown you. So I really think it's take these things that you and I learn to trust each other over, remember them, and let your faith grow from here, Moses. You are learning from me. You will teach Aaron. This is the Tov process. God gives to one and they give it to another. This is the practice of Jesus. He's the rabbi and he has disciples. Jesus receives from God, he gives it to a disciple and passes it on. So very old connection here. But we'll pick up next week when Moses goes home and tells his father-in-law, hey, guess what? Any questions? If you had a conversation with God, would you want him to reaffirm what you know or tell you what you don't know? Yeah. Stretch our world like he was stretching Moses's. Not with snakes. Like Indiana Jones said, why did it have to be snakes? Yeah. Yeah. Well, Miriam Ayad was my Middle Egyptian professor. And she was an Egyptian Christian. And she was taking us through the Book of the Dead, which is the Egyptian underworld. And it's crazy. It's full of demons and all sorts of stuff you got to fight. And more snakes than you can count. Just snakes everywhere. And we were going through it, and she just stopped one day. She goes, there's a lot of snakes here. So that always stayed with me. There's a lot of snakes. Yep. Yes. Yeah. But remember, legion, they're borrowing it from the Roman term, right? Legion. So it's a number. It's 5,000. It's not endless. So there are some angels that fell with him, and they are a danger to us, but they're not equal to God. Satan is not equal to God. I mean, it's far more, God is God, and they are just spirits. All right, let's pray. Gracious Lord, we thank you, even when you talk about snakes. We know our imagination, our fears, our anxieties often project into the world that we live, and we enslave ourselves by what scares us. We thank you that, like Moses, you come to us and you get into the middle of it. You ask us, what is in our hand? Who made you? What were you made for? Lord God, I pray that we will continue to ask and continue to answer these questions with you. To be reminded that just like Moses, we do have a purpose. We do have a calling. We do have a place to go. Help us, O Lord, to not spend our life fixated on our inadequacies, but look at what you have blessed us and equipped us with. We know to the deepest parts of our personality, those skills and abilities, those experiences, those mistakes that we make are all tools that you use to build our life, to be servants, to bring those that bring good into the world. So help us not be held back by anything that we fear, but really strive to be like Moses, imperfect but willing servants of God. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.